after listening to that, I really need a gin now. So many of you might not know I'm a chef, broadcaster, and a presenter, and an author. So when I was asked by the Oxford Farming to come and talk about diversity, so diversity, I come from India. I grew up there many, many moons ago. And for me, I had a restaurant for a long time, and the Her Royal Highness gave me an MBE in 2016. I came from India, where diversity, sustainability, and local produce is very, very important, as India is a very, very big country. For me, when I opened my restaurant, it was in Southwest, where I live in Thornbury, and food for me has always been about bringing people together. It's all about, if you don't speak the language, when there is food on the table, people speak the language. And when I opened the restaurant, I was a woman of color. I had never opened a restaurant. I had worked in many different restaurants, but the banks would not give me a loan. So many, possibly after, I think social media is very, very good and bad points to it. But BBC came for my rescue. They saw the banks weren't giving me a loan, and BBC came and did an interview. And next day, I got a loan, and rest was history. And so I think sometimes, for me, as a woman of color, I love talking about diversity in food, because diversity is not just in food, in different cultures. We have, as an Indian community, have so much diverse food, as Indian food is not just Indian food. We speak so many different languages. We look different. We hate each other. We love each other. Love comes through cricket. If you love cricket, we come together with cricket and food. So I think, for me, it has always been very important when I had the restaurant that I worked very well with my farmers. The farming thing was very important to me, because my grandfather was a farmer, and to have that, you know, there are so many diverse, different kinds of vegetables that you get in India, which I couldn't get it here. So I kind of had a really good communication with the farmers. They were small farmers, and they growed fenugreek leaves for me, mooli, which is an Indian radish, many different vegetables that, you know, I didn't have to wait to come from a different country, and the farmers would go for me. The venison came from 10 miles where I live. Wild boar came like Forest of Dean, if you know. So I think it was such an amazing part of when I had the restaurant. And then moving on to television, when I am on TV, I always talk about that, using the produce from this country, working with the farmers, working with the small producers, and then creating magic with that. I think that has always been my kind of, I have two wonderful daughters, and I always kind of think that it is so important to teach our youngsters. And it's not that when I started my career, I used to teach in schools to the youngsters, and most of them thought that the peas came or the chips came from the freezer. So I think teaching all the youngsters how the food, taking to the farms, taking them to different places to be able to acknowledge that how the producers, how the farmers in these countries are working. I think there are so many chefs I know, and as a chef, I work with different producers, different farmers, so that everything that we do, that we put on the plate, you guys know where the food has come from, you know, how many miles it has come from. So I think that has been my key as a chef, that it's been very, very important to hold that diversity that my parents, my grandfather taught me when I came to this country. I do have also got my gin. So I'm not in competition. So my gin is produced by an amazing local producer, again, where I live in Thornbury. It's made by 6 O'Clock Gin, which is mango, ginger, and lime. Obviously, it's very, very different. It's the thing where I grew up in India with mangoes, with ginger and lime. It's a combination of different things. And I've also written, when I was talking with my fellow sitting on the panel, that I wrote a book called Zyka. Zyka, my publishers say, you really want to write a book? Zyka means flavors, and I wrote plant-based book. The reason I'm not plant-based, I eat everything. The reason for me was Indian food without thinking is plant-based. We don't kind of think where the meat, where the vegetables come from. So I wrote that book, and everybody was, why did you have to write the first book at Zyka as a plant-based book? Because I think Indian food is naturally, if you go to an Indian restaurant, we naturally have diverse amount of vegetables, and then we cook with that. But my second book was on the Himalayan Trail. It's a beautiful book. The reason I wrote that, because to show the diversity in Indian food, to show the diversity in our language, and that showcases all different kinds of food. So I think for me, it's always been very, very important to kind of work with the farmers and the producers as a chef on TV and different institutes that I work in. Thank you.